Hi everybody, Mr. Steiner here. The whole purpose of the video that you're watching right now is just to explain how the homework and lesson system is going to work in 6th grade math this year. And it really is one system that works together, starting with primarily the video lessons like the one you're watching right now. In fact, most of our homework is going to revolve around these kind of video lessons. Most of the time they're going to have some questions at the end, followed by the explanations of the answers so that you can work through the questions and also see an explanation and the answers and get some clarification that way too. Before chapter tests or quests, we are going to have some review sheets that'll be your homework instead of video lessons, and as you'll learn about later, we will have mini sheets that go on every week, but primarily our homework is based around video lessons. And what this does is it gives us more time in class for questions, because it takes some concepts that are normally done in class and it gives us the time for questions in class. It also gives us more time to explore the concept in a little bit greater detail, to really dive into some of those things that you might find difficult when actually looking at and going through the homework. And it'll allow us to see those concepts from the video lessons a total of 3 different times. So there are really 3 primary things that go on in this system. The first, as I said, are video lessons. We're not going to be doing worksheets. We're not going to be primarily doing questions from the book during homework. Most of our homework is going to be video lessons. As I mentioned, there are going to be questions included in those video lessons that deal with whatever concept we're talking about in the video lesson that day. Part of this, though, as the homework is only video lessons and you get the answers to the questions, is that in order for this to work, you're going to need to think about these concepts as you're going through the videos and bring any specific questions that you have to class. Now, specific questions are things related to particular parts of the video or particular parts of the topic that you don't understand. Coming into class and just saying, I don't understand it, is really not a specific question and gives us nowhere to jump off from and talk about. And all homework questions have to be done in your notebook in pencil. The questions that you work on in pencil, then you can do your corrections in pen if you want to use pen, but when you work through the problems, they have to be in pencil. The second part is what we do in class. Now, instead of talking about those topics in class, we're going to be talking about them in video lessons. So in class, we have more time for questions that you might have and for any additional exploration that we're going to do of those concepts. So as I mentioned before, it's important that you bring specific questions to class from the video lesson the night before. That way we can go over those before we jump into the next lesson. We will copy down some specific procedures and other important information, which some of this will become more obvious as we go through the video lessons, but you do need to bring your notebook to class and home for the video lessons so that you can do the work and copy down specific information we need. And then the rest of the time in class, we spend answering your questions and also working through interesting examples and problems related to what we saw in the video lesson, either individually some days, in small groups we may go through it as a whole class. It all depends on what's going on that day. The third part about this, after the video lessons and the part that we have to do in class, all revolves around how we do quizzes in this class. Now, we'll have a few of them, but primarily we don't have large quizzes that happen at specific times during the chapter. We do, at the end of every chapter, have a chapter quest or test, and we'll have review sheets for homework that goes along before those quests or tests, depending on what's going on. But primarily, on the third day, the day after the explorations of a concept, you're going to have a 10 to 15 point mini quiz. And basically what that does is that just checks in on your understanding of the concept. Now, you take a lot of responsibility for your own learning in this system. You watch a video lesson on your own, you work through problems, you get the answers there, you're going to work in groups or individually in class to work through examples there, and I'll of course be here to answer questions and to direct you and to do what I can, but you are really taking on a lot of your own learning in this way. So on that third day, first night video lesson, second day exploration, the third day at the very beginning of class, we have a little check-in mini quiz that will give you and I an understanding of how you're doing with that particular concept. As I said, you're going to have what's called a mini sheet for homework every week, but that will be the only homework outside of the video lessons or the review sheets that happen before a chapter, quest, or test. So to really put this in perspective to how this is going to work, let's look at a sample week. We have class 4 days a week normally. So let's say we had class on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and Friday was the day that we didn't meet. I have each of the different topics that we're doing, or that we might be doing. For example, this chapter would be about decimals. Each of these different topics coded with a different color. And sort of highlighted, I have what we would do for multiplying decimals. So if Monday night your homework was to watch a video lesson on multiplying decimals, that means on Tuesday we would come in and do work with multiplying decimals in class, and then on Wednesday when you come into class we would have a check-in specifically on those decimals. And as you can see, that the same would be true for dividing decimals if you followed that through. We don't have the next week up, but it would be the same for converting fractions to decimals, and then the next day we would see a check-in for converting fractions, and also for converting decimals to fractions. On the far bottom left-hand side, you can see we're already going through some things. We have subtracting decimals that we watched the video lesson for already in this example. So we're looking at it in class and doing the check-in on Tuesday. And if on Thursday or Friday or whatever the last day of the week was before we had talked about adding decimals, we would have that check-in there. So as you can see, every concept that we talk about we're going to see 3 different times: video lesson, in class, and then a check-in, which will give you a good idea of how you're doing and give me a good idea of how you're doing. And so every day we're really talking about 3 potentially different topics, and we see each topic 3 different times. So that's it. That is our homework system, again based around video lessons, this exploration idea in class, and then a check-in every day, pretty much every day, related to whatever concept we talked about the day before.